Hello.
Hey Grant, how you doing today?
I'm doing just fine. I am trying to get everything good and set up here as we enter into our next episode on the big picture. This is going to be always a phenomenal show. So we want to get things started and talk about things around payments. And this is big because global payments across the ecosystem have escalated probably over the last 10 years, but I don't think people understand what's driving change today. I like you to shed a little light on the simple word of payment because we all got them, right? Everybody has a payment of some type. But how is the global payment ecosystem changing in your opinion?
Well, Grant, great to see you today. Thanks for bringing up this topic. I know it's a topic that's probably of interest to everyone,
Yep.
but before we can go forward, let me go back a little bit, and I want to go back and just say, we just came off of two great shows about quantum computing, which is a big topic. But when we start looking at payments, now we're talking gigantic topic. I
Yeah.
mean, there's just so much that's involved with it. And last week, I was in Amsterdam in the Netherlands for the Money 2020 event, which is around 25,000 people. And payments is the main topic at Money 2020 for the last decade. So this was really the event for me to be able to see and hear a lot about what's going on in this space of payments. And I come
Yeah.
back to you with a couple of fresh takes. But again, we want to start at some of the beginning parts. So you brought up a really good question: is what is payments? Simple definition: it's the movement of value from one person to another, and in that movement of value, it is taking care of an obligation. Right. So, in other words, Grant, I want to buy the tie that you're wearing. Very nice tie. And I'm willing to pay you for it. We agree on a price. The payment is that movement of funds that satisfies your price that you're asking for that tie. And then, of course, the
Right.
tie moves to me. So that's kind of a basic thing. And, you know, I'm a big believer in, simple is better. And in the payments world, compared to other worlds in banking, payments are looked upon as simple. It's not really the case anymore. This had gone through quite a big change over the last, particularly decade, as you mentioned. So
Yep. Yep.
there's no longer, some. Okay, so if we go back to last century, so we're back in the '90s when you and I were playing around as youngsters, right? In the '90s, you had only a few forms of payment, right? For companies, right? There was wire transfer, there was checks, there were ACH payments, the automated clearinghouse, which was instituted for lower value payments. And yeah, you could do cash, right? So
Yeah.
so there was a limited number of ways that you could pay on the personal side, or what we call in banking the retail side, the consumer side, right? Really, even less. I mean, very few people sent wire transfers. There certainly was a dominance of writing out checks and mailing checks for all your everyday bills, which meant having to balance your checkbook, something a lot of people weren't real fond of, let's say. And then you had the payments, and let's not forget credit cards, right? So you had
Yeah.
payments that were done by credit cards, right? Then we saw a movement away from credit cards to debit cards. So what's the difference, right? They're both pieces of plastic. They both actually look the same, and actually your credit card cannot work as a debit card, but your debit card can work as a credit card as long as it's associated with that Visa, Mastercard, one of these big credit card companies, right? So what does that mean? Well, in easy terms, a credit card is where you're paying for something and then you have a debt. right? That you'll pay off either in full at the end of the month or by payments on a monthly basis, where, of course, the credit card company is charging you interest on that, right? So there's the
Correct.
payment plus the interest, or like we say in New York, the VIG. Anyway, with the interest charge, we've seen that over, and especially recently, really increase. I don't know, Grant, how often you might get credit card applications or offers through the mail.
All the
We
time. All
Yeah,
the
all the
time.
time, right? So I always open them and look at them, and the one thing I'm looking at, which is where almost nobody looks, is on the back. And on the back, it will show you the terms. By law, they have to print the terms. And almost always the first line is, what is the interest rate? Grant, I just recently got one. The interest rate was 34.9%.
Ouch. Ouch.
It's amazing to me because, there's also on our legal side of the law, there is a statute called usury, right? Which
Yeah.
was mainly used to combat what we call loan sharking. So this is where, somebody lends you money and charges you an exorbitant amount of interest and makes it very difficult for you to kind of pay. And that leads on to all kinds of not so nice things. And there's a criminal element we won't go into and all. But I'm really at a loss to understand how interest rates at that height aren't bordering or already over the standard for usury, but they're allowed to do that. And what really disturbs me personally is that so many of the people today don't even look at that back page. What they look at is, oh, this card granted me $1,000 line of credit. Fine. Let me go ahead and apply for that card and get it, right? Now, the other thing that comes in, which is also on the back, tells you what your annual fee may or may not be. Now, most credit cards, if you have a reasonable line or credit score, you shouldn't have to pay any annual fees, right? On
Yep.
these
Yep.
cards, they will have the annual fee, and when you get your first bill, they already deduct the annual fee. So if your credit line is $500 and your yearly annual fee is $99, your credit line is actually $401 because you're already paying. And by the way, if you don't pay that $99 off all at once, you'll get charged interest on that. So
A lot of interest.
yeah, and
It's in their best interest.
it is. And I feel that there's a lot of people out there who are not aware. And this goes back to something you and I have talked about a number of times on the show, which is, there's not financial education going on in the high school or even lower levels.
Yep.
When these are actual skills and actions that people have to do every single day of their life going forward. We're teaching them things, biology is an important topic, math you must have, right? But, trigonometry, not a lot of people are really going to use. And I understand the educational argument that it's a matter of training your brain to think better, right? But
yeah,
we can't get a little room to get some school curriculum that covers your financial well-being.
Well,
Anyway,
it should be a core subject. It shouldn't be just, like I said, math, science. This is the game we play. This is how we survive in the world. And if you can't be undereducated when it comes to finance and how money works, how do you be undereducated? No, that's got to be front and center.
And it's, what happens though is young people come out. Of course they're anxious to go on to college. They're anxious to go into the workforce. They're anxious to make money. They're anxious to progress their careers. And with that, they're anxious to get a credit card, right? So a lot of them will automatically just sign up for these things, not understanding what's going on in the background. And invariably what happens is they end up in some credit issues, some credit trouble, hurts their credit score. And I don't want to do any, kind of theory about why and how this goes on. But it just seems to me it's in the best interest of a lot of people outside of the credit card holder that their credit score is lower, because then they will always pay more interest. They'll always have higher fees. They'll always be looked at much more carefully. So really, it's kind of amazing to me that this system, just has a mind of its own and is non-stoppable. It seems. I don't know if that's actually a word.
Again, it's in their interest for you to be undereducated. You need money, and just like businesses, right? Businesses borrow money all the time to operate for cash flow reasons, and they understand the time value of money. You have to understand the time value of money because it's constantly changing all the time. And then there's different vehicles to get certain cash or credit, right? There's many different kinds, not just one kind. So what you're talking about is consumer credit. And that consumer credit vehicle, I mean, I see these guys, they're like vultures. They sit on these college campuses just waiting to put our young people into debt. Here's a credit, here's free money. There's no such thing. They should really relabel. I'm a brand guy, right? Should be called literally, it's a debt card. It's not a credit card. It's a debt card, because it's going to put you in debt. It's nice to have, it's a convenience, but that is not something you want to use all the time, because it's the highest it's a very high cost use of business finance. Right. So as Chris is going to say, you're going to get an education today about the true use. And we're talking about payments here, because we all have payments. Anything you consume or you utilize in our world, there's a payment associated with it, right? And this is a matter of keeping up with it. So we want to understand this just a little deeper, because real-time payment systems, and there's all kinds of payment systems, right, of how you pay your debts and things that pay back into your banks. And there's all kinds of mechanisms out there. And I think there's interest associated with those as well. There's like there's no free lunch out here, right? It's just interesting. What's your take on that?
Well, Grant, it's really interesting because have progressed to the point where there's so many different kinds of payments, as well as different forms of funds to pay with, right? That you have systems that are for certain kind of payments. You have systems that are based regionally and country-wise. You have systems that are for the banks. You have systems that fintechs have put together, and of course you have crypto also. So you have such a variety today, and here what we're seeing, and out of Money 2020 last week, when we're which is the show for payments yearly, the buzzword was AI. We've just heard AI in every event this year, and even some of the ones last year. So on the corporate side, they're really taking advantage of AI, artificial intelligence, to figure out what is the most efficient, in some cases fastest, in some cases cheapest, in some cases best regulation-wise way to send that corporate payment. And it's just not always the cheapest and fastest, right? If you have a shipment at the docks, you have your container at the docks, and it needs to get onto the ship, and the ship is leaving, right? You need to spend more money to send a payment that guarantees to get there immediately, typically wire transfer, right? But if you're just paying the rent, for instance, you can schedule a payment like that so that it can go by the cheapest method that gets it there on time most efficiently. So you have a wide range, and the use of AI was just spoken about a lot last week at Money 2020. AI to be able to orchestrate, and that's another big word that we're hearing in payments, payments orchestration, right? To orchestrate the best way, ideally based on the kind of payment it is, based on the value, based on the rails that it's going to be sent upon, all these kind of things, so that it optimizes the payment for the corporate. And while that was done in the past, it was and intensive effort. People would actually have to be spending a lot of time figuring out all these different things, while today AI does that almost instantaneously. It's one of the big benefits of AI is time savings for people, right? So it fits really well.
Let me stop you there, Chris, because we've got to go to a break. But you are, you're speaking to us. We're listening to this because we're all involved in all this stuff with payments, and it's just exploded, I think, over the last 5 to 10 years. So we're going to continue along that track. We're going to go to break for a minute, then we're going to come back and we're going to continue. Thank you very much.
Sedicase efficacy chain, also known as chain of efficacy, a digital chain. A chain is only as strong as its weakest link. Educate, efficiency, effectiveness, and evolve. So whether you are doing market research, studying, doing market analysis, or making a critical financial decision, get the latest breaking, developing market news in the cryptocurrency markets at www.efficacycoin.com. Efficacy Cryptocurrency News is powered by Case Capital Markets. TravelShare. It Marketplace is an innovative, dynamic, user-friendly, and fully comprehensive global travel marketplace, featuring all Caribbean islands as a premier destinations. TravelShare. It Marketplace featured daily travel news, arts, culture, events, travel weather news, individuals' remote work, flex time, paid time off, family leisure time, and travel deals to better connect the U.S., Caribbean, and the Americas worldwide. So no matter where you want to travel in the world for work or leisure, working remotely or on vacation by yourself, with friends or family, whether by air or sea, TravelShare. It Marketplace makes it easy to get you to your destination. Book now at www.travelshare.com.
Reimagine a world where the Caribbean is seamlessly connected, where our people, our cultures, and our economies move freely across the islands. This is Connect Caribbean, more than a ferry service. It's the heartbeat of a new era, an era where economic opportunities expand, where trade flows freely across our seas, and cultural exchange flourishes. We are linking businesses, empowering communities, and reigniting the hope for a truly integrated Caribbean. Together, we're shaping a brighter, more unified future for the Caribbean. Connect Caribbean, connecting our islands, our people, our future.
Welcome to our TV network, your ultimate destination for all things exciting and essential. From mouth-watering food to the latest in fashion, health, education, music, movies, and news, plus thrilling sports and breathtaking travel, our TV network brings it all to you. Tune in today and experience the best of every world, all in one place, RTV.network.
All right, we are back. Grant McGaugh here with Chris Principe. We're talking about payments, not payments. Everybody likes that word payments, like late payments, future payments. There's all kinds of payments, but there are also cross-border payments. You travel all over this world, and you get into cross-border payments. It's always usually pretty slow, cumbersome, but there may be some breakthroughs now, some technologies that are kind of changing that. Do you see that happening now? Have you gone to all these different, shows? And I'm sure this came up.
Well, Grant, you're absolutely right, and spot on with that assessment that there are a lot of changes going on. And again, let me reference back to Money 2020 that I attended last week in Amsterdam. First, anybody that's interested in knowing a little bit more about Money 2020 and the interviews that Financial IT did there, so you can get some real perspectives, I put our website right along the bottom there, just so you could go to that and be able to see the interviews that were done and hear actually from some of the game changers themselves what is going on. But when I talked a little earlier and I said the buzzword, AI being a buzzword and being the key one, there was a second one, which was a new one, which we really haven't started really hearing so much. And now I will tell you we will. And it's called stable coins.
Stable coin, okay.
Stable coins, right. So, in the past, we've heard in payments about crypto and payments done by crypto and some of the speed. Well, what we're finding, I think, in crypto is a couple of things. One, it's fast, but some coins move faster than others. And Bitcoin, which is the one that's used the most, I would say, is probably on the little bit of the slower side. And when I'm talking slower in crypto, I might be talking 10 or 15 minutes rather than in a minute or faster, right? So it's relative, okay? That's one thing. So we hear and we see that crypto for cross-border payments is actually very efficient because it knows no borders, right? It's not a fiat currency that is issued by a country, and of course countries have borders, right? Mm-hmm. It goes across borders. But what's happening now, which is really interesting, is that stable coins are being used as the medium to move funds. Mm-hmm. Okay, so broad statement, right? Let me give you a little bit of the actual workings in that. So if I'm in one country and I'm looking to send a payment through my bank will actually have and buy a stable coin so that then it can transfer that stable coin onto the corresponding bank. Reasons for doing that, okay? There's really three quick ones that come to mind: speed, security, and what it does is it protects you against currency fluctuations. So if we look at cross-border payments, a big component of that, which you really don't see directly, is the FX or the foreign exchange component, right? So when we send a payment in US dollars to Great Britain and they're received in British pounds, right? There's a foreign exchange component there where the currency has to be sold, US dollars sold, and then you buy British pounds to deliver on the other side of the ocean, right? And most of the time it's seamless. I mean, you don't see when you're making your payment from your corporate or personal account, for that matter, that there is that exchange going on. Mm-hmm. And actually in the world of banking today, foreign exchange, the FX component, is one of the most profitable businesses they have. And there's a reason for that. The reason, one, is they are buying and selling the other currencies, right? So there is the price differential, there is some fee, and there's what we call in banking the spread. Okay, so the spread is British pounds today is $1.25 to $1 US. Okay, so when we're buying, we might show the $1.25, but we might actually be buying at $1.22, and that little spread difference there.
It's always a fluctuation constantly.
The bank keeps that. That's what they make. as well as the foreign exchange companies that are involved in this business also. And it's a very profitable business because there's no outlay of funds, right? It's not like I have to lend you money so I can make some money back.
Mm-hmm.
This is I'm buying and selling, and the spread is money. It happens in crypto also, and a lot of people might not notice. There also, example, if you have a Coinbase account and you have Bitcoin and you want to transfer it to Ethereum, or you have Bitcoin and you want to cash it in so you can send it to your bank account, right? The price that Bitcoin is today, let's call it, where are we at, Grant? 110,000, right?
At least.
The price that we have today, when Coinbase does it, they might actually be doing it at a little higher price. And that difference they keep. Or on the other side, they might do it at a lower price. And again, that difference they keep. And actually, as I'm looking in the crypto space, the percentages are actually better than what the banks are making on foreign exchange. So it's become very, very profitable for the crypto companies. And you might notice it, Grant, if you have $1,000 in Bitcoin, you cash it in, and then you want to send it to your bank account. By the time the fees and the spread and things are taken out, you might only end up with actually $950 in your account. Okay. And my quick math tells me that's 5%. 5% is pretty good to pick up for doing a relatively split-second transaction. So now you can understand.
I'm going to stop you there, Chris, because this is important to understand the banking game, the finance world, about true value of money, and understand. We talked about in the first section around credit, and then how they make money on interest. So you're $1, I'll give you $1, but that same dollar, you're going to end up giving me, let's just say $2 back for that dollar that I gave you, because it's almost 100%, once you get into it. And now you're telling me, even in the crypto world, you can, obviously buy coin and it's going to have a certain value. But then when you change that coin into fiat money, let's say in our everyday currencies of US dollars or pounds or whatever it may be, there's another tax or another interest or another fee payment. Let's get back to our whole overall thing. There's a payment that has to be extracted, from you. So that same $1,000 now is $950, and they get taxed. There's so much in my world, especially from the corporate world, we call that leakage. It's a lot of leakage, in this transactional world behind the world. And then you wonder why these banks have so much money, because they don't have to do much, but then they get paid on all this kind of stuff. Am I right?
Yeah, and on a large scale. I mean, literally, you're talking about hundreds of millions, billions of dollars daily that there's, grabbing this small percentage from, right? And that's just one business that the banks are doing, right? They're of course, there's lending. Of course, there's a whole bunch of other things that they do. So it's easy to see why banks are profitable. But again, in crypto, why these exchanges are so profitable? Because the exchanges, if you look at the exchanges that are listed, right, their profitability, their year-over-year growth is off the charts, really, compared to regular commercial business.
This is you're bringing up so many good points as I start thinking, through all of these different things. I want to ask you this. Here's the question. If you're a banker, I want you to put your banking hat on. Is it more profitable for you to lend money to someone with good credit or bad credit? Bad credit's 35% on an interest card. Good credit, maybe it's a few percent. Who's your better customer?
Well, okay, the answer that banks have today, and my banker hat is always on, is both. Okay, that's the answer. Because really what the banks are doing is it's not about money in the vault, Grant. It's about managing risk, right? Mm-hmm. So they can lend at a cheaper rate, and in credit cards, cheaper rate, I don't know, Can you get 15%? That might be as cheap as you can go these days, on a credit card. So it's still very, very profitable, right?
Yeah.
So if you have a substantial amount of your credit card portfolio in lower risk people, you can afford to go out there and have a percentage of high risk people so that you can maximize how much money that the bank can make. And of course, now when you blend them together, the bank is pulling in, easily double digits on the money that they're extending, right? And that's the key to banking. It's the key to lending is, of course, to make more when when you put your money out there, to make more profit on that than the risk that you're taking.
Well, we got to discuss this. Now we got into payments, right? That's the receiving of money. I want to understand this. What is the difference between predatory lending, we've heard the term, and just lending? What is the difference?
Look, the difference really is legal and illegal, I think, in my mind. So what the governments and the regulations allow, it's hard to call that predatory lending because it's legal and you're allowed to do it. Now, where people use that term a lot is when businesses or banks go out to lend to people that may be less educated, that they're not as aware of what it's cost them. People that maybe, are in a situation where they really need money. It's kind of interesting to me, Grant. The more money you have, the more things you get for free. The less money you have, the more fees and penalties you pay.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It should be the reverse, no? I don't know.
You would think, well, everybody understands. Yeah, a lot of people understand this now. Is that when you have money, it's so easy to get more money. The life just becomes a little easier and transactional, as to where when you don't have much resources when it comes to finance, it's a bear, it's a struggle, and like I said, it costs so much just to maintain. So, well, why are we penalizing people that don't have resources, and then rewarding people that really don't even need the reward, quite frankly? Like, I'm flush with cash. It's like, giving somebody that's already got a plate full of food, you're just pouring more food on the plate. Like, I don't really need that, but it's just how the system has been, set up. Do you see, because of a new system taking shape? You talked about that, cryptocurrencies, stablecoin, Bitcoin, but are we only reinventing the same cycle of transactional banking, or is it really changing?
Really an interesting theory you've just put forward, right? I mean, at the end of the day, and like we started the show saying, basically payments are simple. At the end of the day, it's all about, I want this, that's the price, so I need to pay for it before I can get it, right? And I mean, you think about how simple a thought that is, and a simple an action that can be. And it makes you wonder, have we really put all these things in place to make it more complex so that there is earning opportunities? Kind of interesting when you start looking at it that way. Now, on the other side, any of these technologies that we see, whether it's in payments or in crypto or in other areas, basically all start because there's a problem that needs to be solved.
Right.
So, and in a lot of cases, those problems are specific, right? So it's not something that solves everyone's problems, but it's solving very specific problems. And that's really what we've had happened, I would say, over the last decade in payments, is that the innovators out there, the entrepreneurs out there, the people that have gone out and built fintech companies, have really looked at niche problems, and they can have a very successful business with a particular niche by dominating that niche, number one, or by grabbing a good percentage of the business. They don't need all of it. They just need a percentage so that their business can be successful, whatever their cost structure and these kind of things are. And that happens all the time. So yeah, and that brings me up to something that I think is starting to happen, and we're really going to see happen over the next few years. I would say in the next 3 years is going to be a lot of consolidation in the payments business in general. And that consolidation is going to smooth the road out so there's less turns in it.
This is all right. Here, now you're bringing me up to another, because it's changing, and number one, we got to be educated on these things. I think everybody's got to get more educated around just money in general, finance in general, all the way around, because now we're at an influx point where it's actually changing to a certain degree. And if we don't educate ourselves in how this works, again, we get to that point, you're either going to be on the top of this pyramid or you're going to be on the bottom what it's going to look like. There's a lot of in between there, but those in between are usually people that are at least more educated and know how to utilize their resources to the best, because you don't want to keep giving away your resources, right? So as we get into mobile wallets, most people are like, mobile wallet, what do you mean by a mobile wallet? And how that's going to be embedded in finance, and then what is the role of traditional banking? How is it evolving around mobile wallets? So first, we need a good, clear education or understanding of what a mobile wallet is.
So great.
Oh, wait a minute. I just been told. Before you answer that, because that's such a good topic, we're going to go to break. And then we're going to come back and really get into, because I want the artists to really seek mobile wallets. Even look it up on Google, look it up on ChatGPT, mobile wallets, and we're going to get Chris's definition. Thank you.
Today we're taking a little vacation on the west end of St. Croix, visiting a seaside restaurant called the Beachside Cafe here at Sandcastles on the Beach.
The atmosphere is just wonderful.
You just feel very welcome when you're here.
Hi!
I'd like to introduce Chris and Ted, who are the owners of Beachside Cafe and also Sandcastles on the Beach. This is amazing!
Thank you.
Sandcastle on the Beach is quiet and friendly, relaxing.
I often entertain guests, and this is the one place I always try to bring people.
Tell us a little bit about the hotel.
Well, the hotel is a 25-room hotel. We have 10 different room types within that. We also have, of course, our greatest asset, the ocean out there, which our side of the island is very calm typically. So it's the best swimming beach and also great for snorkeling.
And just walking, doing a nice walking beach tour.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Best beach access is right here, so we love them.
And we're also fortunate we have just up the way Sandy Point National Park, and then Frederickstead Town is just a mile away. Mm-hmm. And so we're really fortunate to be in this perfect spot.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Big Picture with Grant and Chris. We're talking about mobile wallets. If you weren't here before our last break, we're talking about mobile wallets. We want to talk about what's going on and how it's evolving right now. I'm going to let Chris. I want Chris to almost define it, but I'm wondering if these banks are going to become more just platforms. Are they going to be more back-end providers, or will they go into digital irrelevance? Take it away, Chris.
Yeah, well, Grant, I mean, the payment space on its own is so big. I really think that this is a topic that we will do a few shows about because it just goes on and on. I mean, you keep coming up with some great topics. So mobile wallets, right? And just to answer your question, the banks today are platforms, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what people don't realize is that especially the big banks are big technology companies. They have technology staffs bigger than IBM's, bigger than Microsoft's, bigger than Apple's. They have these technology staff that can really do any and everything. Most of what they come up against is regulation on how far they can go and not. And I think that we'll see right now into the short-term future that the banks are going to get more leeway regulatory-wise to do more things. And the obvious one, of course, is crypto. The banks are not yet able to offer crypto to their customers, right?
Mm.
And that comes to the topic of mobile money because and mobile wallets, right? So, real simple definition from my view on a mobile wallet is a place where you can store your various forms of payments, various forms of getting paid, as well as your funds themselves in different forms, meaning fiat, crypto, credit, these kind of things, right? And it's basically what we like to say is in the cloud, right? Mm-hmm. So instead of having the wallet that's in your pocket or in your purse, where you keep your credit cards and you keep your cash, this mobile wallet is accessible anywhere through a device that reaches the internet, right? So from your desktop, from your laptop, from your phone, and this is becoming the most important way of accessing your funds and a way of making payments. So your mobile wallet is on the phone. In fact, what's happened is that most people now have multiple mobile wallets.
Mm.
Okay, and this is where where we broke off on just the last for commercial break. I was talking about consolidation. This is also going to be one area where we're going to see consolidation because today there is a huge number of mobile wallets out there, and again, a lot of them are niched for niche purposes. A lot of them are company specific, and reason companies do that is for customer retention, right? If you're using their platform and their mobile wallet to make your payments, that convenience factor keeps you on their platform. Hopefully they can do more. So we see the telephone companies like Samsung, like Ericsson, like Apple, all offering different ways of being able to have a mobile wallet and store your various ways of getting paid and to pay, right? So we see a lot of that, right, already. The consolidation there is all going to be based on size, right?
Mm-hmm.
The more people using your wallet, the stronger you will be. So we're going to see a lot of these bigger companies, and it's already been happening, start going out there and purchasing and acquiring and just taking over other smaller mobile wallets so they can build up their customer base. I mean, if you look at, and I don't know what the numbers are, but look at the number of people that use Samsung phones, right?
Yeah.
It's 100 million, maybe. I don't know. Maybe it's 10 times that. I don't know what it is. But if every one of those people are using Samsung Pay, that is a huge customer base that they're able to access and retain, more importantly, right? So they will all be looking to build that.
Are you saying, let me stop you there. Are you saying like on your phone, you've got Samsung Pay, you've got Google Pay, you've got PayPal. I mean, these are forms of mobile wallets.
Yes.
And then the crypto mobile wallet, one thing I know, you've got to have a certain code to use. And if you lose that code, you don't you lose access. It's very important to understand these mobile wallets.
Well, and Grant, that's an excellent point, because overlapping all of this and overlapping payments and overlapping banking and overlapping our lives is security, right? So that's a key component. And the level of security is, we've spoken about it before, Grant. It's an arms race. The bad guys figure out a way to break in. We figure out a way to keep them out. We come up with a new level of security. They figure out a way to break in. And it will continue to be that. There's no getting away from that. But that's also going to be a big selling point for a lot of these mobile wallets, is their security factor. Because, our money, our control of our payment methods is embedded in there, right? So we don't want to have to be worried about that at night and wake up in the morning and find out that something we didn't expect would happened, right? So security, of course, is very important, and that's constantly being worked at. What's interesting right now, of course, is how crypto is handled, right? So we have dedicated crypto wallets, right? So, like Coinbase, for instance, is a crypto exchange where you can buy and sell crypto that offers their own wallet. So the more people that have Coinbase wallets will just naturally be the more people that use Coinbase Exchange. And earlier we talked about how profitable that is, which is why Coinbase is as profitable as they are, right? So that just all comes back into it. Today, banks are not allowed to offer crypto directly to consumers. That's going to change. And when that changes, then we will see a struggle. And I'm going to be really interested to see, because I think it will be to our benefit, a struggle between all these different mobile wallets and what the bank is offering. Because at the end of the day, our money is in the banks. This is one of the things I think people may not be aware of, is that probably the most important aspect of a bank license, and that's something that's very difficult and very costly and very time consuming to even think about getting. But once you have a bank license, you have the legal right to hold money. The fintech platforms don't have that. Fintech platforms have to take the money in and be a pass-through, so a payment. I send my money, take PayPal for instance, I send my money through PayPal onto the person I want to pay. It's a pass-through. The money doesn't sit there more than a very, very short period of time. Okay? When companies have wallets and the money is being held in the wallet, that company is taking that money and putting it in a bank account and then taking it out of the bank account, right? So the banks have a fundamental advantage, which is the bank license, which gives them the ability to hold funds. So now, if we look at, I think, the near future, when banks will be allowed to offer crypto to the consumers as well as their corporates, their wallets will be accommodating your crypto. And now I think that will accelerate the consolidation in the industry, because a lot of players won't be able to play the game the same way.
This is going to fundamentally shift. So you can see the elephant in the room. It's probably these banks sitting there hovering over the the Coinbase table, or some of these locations, all these cryptocurrencies and whatnot, because they have the banking license. You bring up a good point around that. And then, because it always comes back, we started from our first show, is it legal tender or not? what legally is it? Because it's almost like water. Is it a solid, or is it a gas, or is it liquid? And it's actually all of them, right? Yeah. Money's kind of like that.
Yeah, and it's a good point. And just to reiterate something that I think we've mentioned a couple of times during our shows, there is, the banking business has really changed, right? And a lot of that change has come from the outside, and which forces the banks to have to change with them. Because, and again, going back to the license, banks have that. They don't necessarily need to change unless really pushed, right? And here the push is actually not going to come from the outside. The push is going to come from the reduction of regulation and the allowance in the regulation and by the regulators to let the banks get into this space. So it's totally different than anything that we've seen, going back decades, right? It's totally different how this is going to happen. And again, it's going to fuel the consolidation in the payment space that we talked about. It's going to fuel the consolidation in the mobile wallet space. And there's a few more spaces that this is going to touch and fuel. And, it's interesting to me because last week in Money 2020, in speaking to some of the banks, I had a great conversation with Standard Chartered, which is one of the great global banks that's out there. And also Lloyd's, which is the British bank. They're really interested in this space, and they're just waiting for it to be acceptable in terms of the regulators for them to actually get involved. But it's one of the few times in my career that I'm seeing and hearing that the banks are actually building things that are not already out there, building things that are not already being delivered to their customers, that they're building things in anticipation of the near term when they'll be able to. And again, even between the banks, it'll be a race to get out there.
No, Chris, this is all very interesting. And I still haven't got my fundamental question answered, right? A dollar is a dollar, or, money is money. I mean, what for the average everyday consumer or, a player on this monopoly board, right? I mean, just because you all of a sudden, I go to the bank, I get dollars, I go to the bank, I get crypto. Is it a fundamental shift? Or is it making my life easier? Is it making it better? Is it just, I don't know. What is the fundamental advantage? So if you had to give a piece of advice to the payment leaders, the banks, the fintechs, the people who have, this new type of currency, I mean, is there a fundamental shift or change, or is it a competitive advantage in this fast moving space?
Well, Greg, I think it's all about competitive advantage because, realistically, if we wanted to simplify these things, we would have one financial institution globally. It's just like when I see cars on the road, right? Do we really need 100 different models by, 20 different manufacturers? Is that what we need? Or do we need one manufacturer of cars that just makes, the right car that everyone can use? And it also it gets involved with that is, your personal preferences, right? So I think we will see these same things when we look at the bank space. And, it's also the kind of thing where, and you can speak to this better than I can as a brand guy, right? It's also about how do you keep enhancing your brand? Well, I would imagine you can hit this better for me is, new advancements, new products, things that make you different, things that hopefully make you unique, at least for some period of time, any of these kind of things. So that speaks to the opposite of, we should have one car manufacturer making, all the cars everyone needs. So there's not all this discussion and diversification and, what say you on that?
I'll take that on, and from my lens, from branding, sales, marketing lens, perception is reality. I'm going to say that again. Perception is reality. If you perceive, let's just say, cryptocurrency as a better form of financial transactions, then it is. If you also perceive that having a fiat currency in the traditional banking system is a better form of transacting business, well, then it is. We remember the day when, no one wanted to do business through e-commerce. I still remember that day, right? You still wanted to go to the bank. I think my parents still do this. They love to go to the bank. They love to go to the bank and get cash in their hands, and then go someplace and buy things and get change, and that kind of thing. Where if you probably ask my daughter now, she's like, what? That's just like more stuff, right? I can just give you this card, right? Or I can just tap my phone, right? And you have the exchange of service. Remember, at the root core, we have an agreed upon system of finance. We agree that piece of paper with some ink on it is actually worth something. We agree, because at the end of the day, if we don't agree on that, it has no value, right? It just doesn't. So as a collective, to your point about regulations and finance and government and things like that, that's why you say, you know what, we're just going to agree that this is worth something, and it is a bargaining a type of bartering that you can utilize without me having to give you, hey, here's my tennis shoes for your shirt type of thing. Like, we're going to have an agreed upon, form of currency with a value that we say, hey, your tennis shoes are worth X. It's $10. My shirt is worth $20. You owe me $10, or maybe another pair of shoes. So this is how we elevated our form of exchange of goods and services. Does it change because it's a cryptocurrency as opposed to a fiat currency? To me, I don't know. It's like, I'm not sure. But to your point about, even when we studied even earlier, talking about interest, and is your money worth more, right? Is what you're trading for worth more in a crypto world as opposed to a traditional banking world? Then that's another discussion. Like, oh, it's worth more. There's more value there. Then I'm going to be more inclined to think about that. So, with that said, I'm going to end here, and I'm going to thank you again. And we're going to take a look at what we're going to talk about further, because we open up this whole can of worms. We can constantly talk about finance and business and technology and how that all comes together, because this is not going to end. And we're going to try to educate our audience around these things, so we won't be talking about that. So thank you very much.
Great, Grant.
Welcome to our TV network, your ultimate destination for all things exciting and essential. From mouth-watering food to the latest in fashion, health, education, music, movies, and news, plus thrilling sports and breathtaking travel, our TV network brings it all to you. Tune in today and experience the best of every world, all in one place, rtv.network.